Well, one thing all premiership sides have in their identity is hard running and an ability to spread. Kingy, with thanks to Zero, you're going to take us inside the lab at some of the spread that we saw tonight, which, I mean, comes back to work rate.
Yeah, and it's hard not to look at Geelong and think, OK, they're getting outworked in the midfield. For the bulk of the game, OK, they made a charge in the last quarter. And you have to question, is it effort or motivation, or is it a lack of fitness and preparation? And some have been impacted through the off-season, so we're not going to be too critical at round two, but if it is to be a lack of effort and motivation, I always come back to Joel Selwood setting the standard for these guys and being able to eyeball a couple through the course of the game, because they're left in the wake here. And I just don't know whether it's attitude. I hope it's not. But if it is, the King is dead.
Spot on, and we will never know, King. It might be a little bit of everything, just a tiny bit of the motivation that they've had in previous years, not quite there. Certainly a little bit of a mini pre-season, not as big as other years. Maybe age is starting to catch up with a few of them. It might just be little things in a bit of everything, but we've seen enough in 2 games now to say there is some slight concerns there. Now, we're not going to get carried away. I mean, you look at their next 6 weeks, they've only got one team that played finals last year, or one team that we think will be a finals team this year in Sydney. Their other 5 games are relatively soft. We know there's no easy games in the AFL, so they might still be building. There's still time, but certainly at stages today, they look like they had lead in their boots. They just could not go with Carlton. They looked a bit slow, they looked off, but they've still got plenty of time to build.
We laud Joel Selwood as being one of the greatest leaders the game has ever seen. So if he's not there, I suppose it makes sense that they're lacking leadership in some respect.
Oh, there's enough senior players there to lead. I mean, it wasn't all about Joel. We know how great a leader he was, but they've got so many good leaders down there, but they are all struggling for form at the moment. It
was interesting, when they got back in the 4th quarter, Chris got through the kids in there. At one stage, it was Tanner Bruin, Jack Bowes and Max Holmes in the midfield. He put Guthrie behind the ball, and that made a bit of difference. So maybe just those younger, fresher legs gave them that little bit of spark in the 4th quarter.
I've never seen them look so vulnerable everywhere. I mean, in the midfield, they were belted early. That first half, I mean, the scoreboard told a lie, really. It should have been a 5-6 goal gap in the game. So, down back, OK, they're missing some soldiers, and Duncan and Tom Stewart. These guys are Hall of Famers, you know. So it's very hard to talk about what's not complete, but Carlton had a few out as well. We can only judge on what we see, and I just think last week they gave up 125 points and looked really vulnerable everywhere. Anytime Speed was on the game against Collingwood, and tonight when Speed was on the game, their midfield looked one-paced and it looked to lack a real attitude that said, no, I'm just going to push regardless. So they've got a lot of work to do. To not beat those sides you just mentioned, but we're going to get to the stage where they're going to play half a dozen good sides in a row. Yeah. And they're going to have to be at a level that's a fair bit higher than today.
That's right. And we're benchmarking them for a pretty high standard.
We are.
I mean, they very rarely play like that or like they have the last 2 weeks. That's why we're so surprised, but we know the champion side they are.
This is where the real problems are, and this is what highlighted to me the depth of trouble that the Cats are in. So we talk work rate, you talk, well, they've probably had a gradual build-up. Have a look at this.
This was the 3rd quarter.
This was the 3rd quarter, yeah. But we're just talking about the lack of work rate. Look at the numbers there. It's frightening. There are 9 Carlton players inside the attacking 50 to 5 Geelong players and 2 sitting outside with their hands on their hips or on their knees. Chip it to a loose player who strolls in and kicks a goal. That, to me, Kingy, is as un-Geelong-like as anything we've seen in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's damning vision, isn't it? And we saw Carlton break away with ease from traffic quite regularly, particularly that 3rd quarter. It was hard to watch, and look, if we didn't have the ultimate faith in the Geelong Footy Club, you'd get off pretty quick. Yeah, but they've been an organisation that's been able to rally and fight, but they've got a challenge on their hands. It was a one-man war tonight with Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah, it was. He kept them in it. And to be fair, you talk about the Carlton spread, and we're not talking about the best spreaders in the competition, like Kennedy, Ed Curnow, Cripps, you know, Chera. It's not like they are, you know, some of the, you know, Oliver and Petrarca and these guys bursting from contests. So it was certainly stark in the contest that Geelong just couldn't keep up.
Little stat there. The last time the reigning premiers started 0-2 was the Hawks back in 2009.
Didn't need to go there. It's just a matter of how many weeks it takes. How many weeks will it take for Geelong to get that match fitness under the belt and start to play a little bit like the Geelong of old?
Their next few weeks are reasonably a softer draw, dare I say it. The Suns, the Hawks and the West Coast Eagles. So teams that weren't finalists last year, and that is an opportunity. I mean, if they dropped one of those games, then alarm bells would be ringing quite loudly.
Have you ever been in the position that Tom Hawkins is in as a full forward, you know, a big frame, he's going to challenge his body, defined now, and gather fitness really quickly in season, which is hard to do. Have you ever been in that position?
In season, yeah, not at the beginning of the season. Right. Not when you've come off a pre-season and you actually feel fresh and you think, I'm in pretty good nick, I'm ready to go. He looks like he hasn't done a really big pre-season. Now, we know how good he is and he still finds a way to contribute, but he's a far cry from what we've seen when he's dashing up on the lead, getting over the back, taking the contested marks. He couldn't get to the contest enough tonight.
I think it's reasonable. We shouldn't underestimate the significance of him at his age, the size of him in the way he plays, that he didn't have a pre-season with that injury. So he's going to be playing catch-up for a big portion of this first half of the season.
So what are the expectations on Tom then? I guess that's what I'm getting to. So if he's limited, if he's capped, it puts a huge reliance on Jeremy Cameron. Tonight he's kicked 6 and was amazing.
It does. He's got to play that second fiddle role and find a way to kick his 2 goals every week. We know he does all the ruck work up forward and he creates goals with that, and he's we heard Jacob Wiedering praising him, saying he's tough to play and he's very selfless. He brings his teammates in. He's still got to find a way to kick his couple every week.
So is the best way to get that intense match fitness to continue playing at AFL level, or is it to step away?
Well, he's not going to go back and play at the lower level, let me tell you right now.
No, but is it to step, if he's not right, step away and do a bit more training?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Do you have a few weeks off and do another mini pre-season? And only the Geelong fitness and medical people will know what's going to do him the best.
And they probably are the best team. They did it with Dangerfield. He had those calf injuries at the start of the year. They gave him a block of pre-season training, didn't play him when they probably could have. Difference was Geelong had wins in the bank early. You could bank some wins and maybe have that luxury.
Which they're not getting now.
If they're not getting now, then you've got to continue to win games, so they might have to keep playing.
All right, you're Chris Scott. You've got 3-4 winnable games in a row coming up. Do you bite the bullet now and put him through that 2 to 3 week pre-season, or do you roll on?
I'd try and do it now. If that's what they think's best, I'd take him out and give him a 3-week pre-season block, get him hardened and fitter and feeling fresh, and then when he comes back in, he is back to the Tom Hawkins we know, and hope they're good enough to get by and win some games the next 3 weeks.
I think one of the problems is they haven't been able to manufacture a forward line without him because of the injuries at the other end.
Yeah.
You know, that's the problem. They've got good-sized players that are all injured, 3 or 4 of them that normally play down back.